What's up, everybody? So, we've got a little bit of a wacky court schedule today. It seems like I was a little behind, and as I was catching up, I realized they were taking all these breaks, and it seems to be close enough to lunchtime to where we might as well hop in, do our update. We got a lot of other stuff going on today as well. I'm going to be on JB at 3 o'clock, WFLA 8, talking about Koberger. I'm going to do a Koberger hearing breakdown tonight. So let's knock out what's going on in the Hannah Gutierrez trial right now. We're going to talk about how yesterday ended with that weapons expert, and then we're going to talk about Hannah Gutierrez Reed's own statements being used against her, which we knew would happen. We know it's going to happen to Alec Baldwin. It's really difficult for the defense to come out with their statements and their theory of the case and what their defenses are when your client has already given multiple statements. And that's exactly what's happening here. And we'll talk about how I would use those statements if I was a prosecutor in closing argument. They're getting a lot of them out. They're building a lot of context. They're hearing from her as if she's testifying, basically. Frankly, she doesn't need to testify at this point. The state probably doesn't care if she testifies. If she does, I'm sure they'll find inconsistencies and impeach her. But at this point, basically her testimony is in video form and we're getting it. Her lawyer's sitting there for half of it. There are multiple interviews. We've watched some of these together on the channel before the trial, but there's a lot more in these. We're not going to play the whole thing again. You don't need me to regurgitate and watch and repeat everything that she said. So I'm going to hit some highlights and some things I'd specifically used based on the arguments made by the state and the defense and how lawyers use statements like this from criminal defendants that give interviews. So hit that like button if you guys haven't already. Subscribe to the page. Do all those things. I appreciate it so much when you do, and I'm happy you're here. Yes, we finished with cross of the expert, and basically it seems like the best defense is PDQ Seth Kenney negligently mixed in live ammo that was delivered on set, and it was the type of live ammo that looked like dummy rounds where you couldn't shake it. There was no hole. Everything looked the same, and you wouldn't have known unless you took it apart and found the four components that the first FBI expert testified that that's the only real way you can 100% confirm whether or not something is live ammo or not, because this defense checks all the boxes. Hannah Gutierrez Reed could have done her job and not been negligent, and this live ammo could have still gotten through. So if that's the case and her negligence could not have prevented this, then she is not guilty. So that to me is the best defense I've seen supplied so far. And we're going to talk about that more when we talk about Hannah Gutierrez's statements, because she blows the doors off of basically every other potential defense and maybe even this one. But this is the only one I felt like holds any weight at this point, even though on redirect, the state basically confirms that this live ammo that was fired from this firearm that was the fatal shot was likely not from PDQ. So the state has already put up a fight against that claim. But to me, that's really the only way, because the question all of you have is, how did live ammo get on set? And if it had anything to do with Hannah Gutierrez Reed, I kind of think the world, including this jury and including this chat, is leaning toward guilty. If she brought the live ammo on the set and still failed to see it and catch it and do things necessary to prevent it from being removed or stopped before it was fired, she is one of the culpable parties. That's where it feels like it's going. So let's talk about her interviews. The first one was done the day of the shooting. The second one was done a couple weeks later. Yes, the tone of the interviews, both of them, frankly, I thought seemed like she didn't care that much, for lack of a better term. And my guess is the jury probably didn't love it, her demeanor and her actions. But this detective that's on the stand did a lot of the interviews, including the one with Hannah Gutierrez. And she basically says that Hannah Gutierrez Reed's dad reached out to her and wanted to set up an interview. And basically what happens with this, when Hannah Gutierrez's lawyer sets up an interview for the dad and for his client, a lot of people are pointing the finger saying he's dumb. That's malpractice. How can you do that? But a lot of times you can do certain things before charges are filed to affect those charges or get it to where they don't file charges at all against your defendant. So sometimes you do cooperate, sometimes you do work with them, and sometimes it does work, but your lawyer is there to protect you. You shouldn't give statements without your lawyer. If your lawyer advises you, it can help you to give this statement. Sometimes it does, but it doesn't always work. So, we'll have to see how it works out for Hannah Gutierrez, but it's not that abnormal. She also determined that Hannah Gutierrez got ammo on the set from 3 sources. Even though from her initial interview, Hannah Gutierrez Reed said she only got it from Seth Kenney, she confirmed later that she got it from Seth Kenney, Billy Ray, some guy from another company, and Hannah Gutierrez herself. And that's the big ticket item we're going to get to. Hannah's lawyer, also in trying to not have charges filed against Hannah Gutierrez, tells this officer that he believes there was sabotage on the set based on the disgruntled camera crew. Yet, Hannah Gutierrez and all other witnesses in the trial have not corroborated that and in fact said the opposite. Her lawyer has also pointed the finger at Seth Kenney. So what did law enforcement do but investigate him further? Search PDQ. Kenney was very cooperative. They found only one set of live ammo perfectly labeled on his property, even though it looked horrible, like a complete mess. That was the one thing he apparently did right. And law enforcement basically excluded him as a criminal defendant with criminal negligence in this case. They did not find that. And I get it. If they didn't want to charge Alec Baldwin, fine. Playing favoritism, Hollywood, money, power, whatever you want to say. But why would they not just arrest Seth Kenney too if he was a culpable party? The whole she's the scapegoat, I don't think that works for Seth Kenney. He's not some big shot. Frankly, Hannah Gutierrez has said in multiple interviews, her dad is the industry of armorers in Hollywood. So I think some of the defenses are falling apart here as some of the testimony continues to develop for the state. And again, she confirms that the live ammo from PDQ did not match the live ammo on the Russ set. It did match what Hannah's father described, but it did not match the live ammo. They talk a little bit about, the FBI policy on DNA. We've already been over that, how they got the stuff from the cell phone. Baldwin said he didn't pull the trigger. They get to the body cam footage where Hannah Gutierrez Reed admits that she effed up. That's a quote I'd potentially play in closing argument. They show her being read her Miranda rights, just so no jurors sitting on there like, why didn't you guys read her Miranda rights? She says I should probably have an attorney, but I'll answer some questions. And she does answer some questions. She explains what she did that day. She dummied up the gun before lunch. Sarah didn't handle the gun that day. Again, removing somebody else. Like Hannah Gutierrez literally removes a ton of defense arguments with her own statements. She removes Sarah Zachary from the conversation. She admits it's her job to dummy up the gun, and she was the one handling the gun before lunch. She confirms there's never live ammo on set. That's never happened to her where live ammo has ever been on set. She confirms the guns are locked up every night. She goes through the different blanks and explains, what's a dummy, what's a blank, which is in line with all of the other testimony in this case. She recounts the day, what happened. She again says she got all her ammo from Seth Kenney, even that specific box, which is not correct. We already know that. And I'm going to pull in just for a couple quotes. I don't do it for all of them, but just to give you an idea of the type of thing you can do in closing argument when you have videos like this. And this is actually evidence. It's not a video deposition where sometimes courts won't let you play the video deposition, but this they can play. And there are a lot of snippets like this one that you can fuse into your closing argument when you say you're talking about duty, breach, causation, negligence. This fits perfectly into your argument.
If something like that can be dysfunctional or...
I mean, overall, these are some weird, what we're dealing with are explosives. There's always a chance of safety to be compromised. And that's the issue. And that's what I'm supposed to watch out for on set.
Whenever there's explosives, there's always a chance of safety being compromised. And that is what I am supposed to watch out for on set. So knowledge and foreseeability that when dealing with these things, safety can be compromised. She knows that. That's foreseeable. And whose job is it to make sure that doesn't happen? She says that's her job on set, which is where this happened. She also talks about how her dad and Seth were training her. They show her a picture of the live round, and she says, "Oh, it looks like that might be a blank." And they're like, "It was very clearly not a blank." They testified to that again, her trying to fix the situation. She confirms she doesn't think the crew had anything to do with it. She said perhaps there was a bad round in the box. And again, she doesn't know a lot in this interview. When we get to the next interview, she knows a lot more. Her lawyer knows a lot more, and that's why some things change. She said that she checked all 6 rounds that she put into the firearm for a rattle, yet they know that's not true because at least one of them wouldn't have rattled because it had a hole in the ammo. So to me, that's pretty damning. That's her knowing, again, that she has a duty to do something that she should have done, that she didn't do, but she's saying she did to CYA. That's problematic in a case like this, where it's all about duty. Did you have the opportunity to do your job? Because that's something else the defense is arguing, is like, she was put in a situation set up to fail. Well, it's like, well, she's saying she shook all 6 of them. She could have shook all 6 of them. She should have shook all 6 of them, but she clearly didn't because one of them wouldn't have even rattled. Well, more than one of them wouldn't rattled, right? Because we knew there was live ammo and at least one dummy with a hole in it. I'm going to jump ahead because you guys also love jury questions. So let's see how they handle this jury question. And it's pretty common for something like this to happen in a case like this as well. When you're dealing with a lot of videos, some of it's hard to hear.
Can we have closed captions for video testimony? Okay, so here's the situation. You'll remember
The
that.
question was, can we have closed captions for video testimony? Because it's hard to hear and follow some of the things. And watch what this answer is. I would have objected to this if I was the defense, to be honest. But, and you can, and we've won this objection in the past, and I'll explain why once we hear what their answer is. Rebecca, thank you so much for gifting 10 memberships.
It was redacted. So well, first of all, no, the answer is no. They do have some transcriptions, but they have the transcription of the whole thing, of the whole interview, and they've redacted some of it. So that's not going to work. However, we did, Brian mentioned that you all had some, somebody said that you're having difficulties. So on listening to all of it, or interpreting all of it. So what we're going to do is she's just going to stop from time to time and ask her to repeat what was heard or what was said. Okay. Now, if you really feel like you missed something and Ms. Morrissey or Mr. Bowles aren't asking the witness what was said, raise your hand. Don't be shy. Okay. Because if you'd have told us, we could have done that in the other video too. And we want you to hear as much as you can in the courtroom. And then of course you can always replay it when you're deliberating. Okay.
So, and the reason I would have objected to some of this is I would object to people repeating what the interview said, right? Now, there are ways to get around this. The state could have produced a transcript, which they said they did, but they didn't redact it to match up with the video. They could have done that. That might have been appropriate. And then she says you can ask the witness to repeat certain things, and that can be objectionable, but you can get around that objection because the witness is allowed. The witness was sitting in the room. Obviously, the defendant was talking to the witness. So the witness can say, the defendant told me X, Y, and Z, because it's a hearsay. It's hearsay, but she is a party opponent, is the defendant. So those statements come in. They're an exception to hearsay. So the witness can say what the defendant said. Now, they're not just supposed to repeat a video because the video is the best evidence. And just like we found out in the Alec Murdaugh trial, the jury goes back there and listens to the video on their own and makes their own determination about what was said. And if they disagree with whoever's repeating it, they need to go on what they think the video actually said. So there have been fights about transcripts and videos and all sorts of trials. Not a big deal here, but just a little side note about lawyering and how you deal with this stuff in a trial. Hannah Gutierrez continues testifying basically. I think this is the second interview now when her lawyer's actually there about her experience, which is basically she was the armorer on one other movie set. And this was the second one. No official training, just basically her dad. She doesn't know anything about the licensing or certifications that's required, or training or things like that. Production told her to work more on props and less on the armor position, which again is bad and setting her up to fail, but nobody forced her to keep doing it. And you can say that she didn't really have a choice because she wanted to get the days to, make it in the business. But when you accept a job and when you do it, you accept the duty and the responsibility. And it sucks, but it's really important so people don't get hurt. And then here's something that she goes through. And I'm going to pull up the second interview here in a second. I think the biggest question you've all had, and I understand, and the biggest thing that's just like mind-boggling is, how does live ammo get on set? And Hannah Gutierrez basically walks the state exactly through that in this interview. She says, in her own words, that she had some loose dummies ammo in her car from another set that were left there for a couple weeks. And she basically took those loose dummies, filled boxes with them, and brought them on set. And to add insult to injury, this is just a side note, but her and Seth Kenny were planning on collecting money for using those leftover ammunition from another movie because there was theirs and they needed to get paid for that. She's like, at this point, I don't think I'm going to ask for that money. But she basically took dummies from her car, filled boxes, brought them on set, put them in the guns. And again, this is the state, I think, is how they would explain what she's saying. So she only said she supplied 2 boxes of the exact kind that would be used in the Baldwin gun. And the photo that Hannah showed law enforcement that she put together is the same ammo box that was on the cart. And if you look at it, it's very clear that there's a hodgepodge of ammunition packed together, different types of dummies and live ammunition, not a sealed brand new box from a PDQ type company that all would have matched. She brought that mismatched hodgepodge box of ammo on set, and it makes complete sense. It's the picture she showed him. It's the picture on the prop cart. You open it up. They're all different. The ammunition from the gun itself right after it was used, the fatal shot, was all different. None of it was the same. Hannah Gutierrez brought it on set with her mismatched ammo from her car. That story tracks. I think that is the most plausible explanation with the evidence we've heard so far. And I think the state is going to be able to use snippets from her interview to walk the jury down that line. And once you have the fact that she brought the live ammo on set, if the jury agrees with that argument from the state, it's pretty easy to prove her negligence in other areas. But if there was sabotage or Seth Kenny mixed in a live ammo, I think she would have had a better argument. Let's actually, it was in this video. So she also talks about this, which I thought was interesting. Where am I? So this is the second interview when her lawyer's there now, as you can see, where they ask her, what is an actor's duty when it comes to handling the guns? Because we've talked a lot about what your duty is that you failed at. The state's going to argue. What is an actor's duty? And let's listen to what she says.
Box. Okay. And a box of dummies.
I'm Alec Baldwin's team. I'm getting this part in too, somehow, some way.
So our actors or crew members on set, are they advised to self-inspect weapons?
I'm not really sure. Most of
Are actors advised to self-inspect the weapons? She's not even sure. She's supposed to be training the actors and training the people on set about how to do all this stuff with the weapons. But she doesn't even know what the duty of the actor is. You would think she was the one that should tell the actor, you've got to check the weapon. Now, she does kind of say that here, but it's so nonchalant and just would not give you a lot of confidence in her.
the time when they tell me, like, I'll go up to them and I'm like, here, and I show them it's clear, they'll be like, it's okay, I trust you. I say, don't trust me, go ahead and always check for yourself.
Okay.
But, yeah,
Are they required to self-check?
no, not really.
Okay.
But I do show them every time before I hand them off to them.
All right.
Show them that the gun's clear.
Have you seen any of them do their own safety checks?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Jensen does his own safety checks. Travis does his own safety checks. Travis ML. Devin was getting into doing his own safety checks because I taught him how to do it. So he was kind of getting better at that.
What do they do to do these checks?
Pull the hammer back to half cock, spin it around and close it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So not pulling it round out, checking them themselves.
No, not really.
Okay. Has it ever been common practice for actors to do?
I'm not really too sure.
She
What
doesn't even know what the common practice is for actors checking the gun themselves.
But on your last production, did they ever do their own?
Nick Cage definitely did not.
Cage
He
definitely
barely
did not.
really cared to train with the gun at all.
He didn't want to train with the gun at all. And I get it. And I can see that. Big Shot's been in other movies say they don't want to do stuff. I get it. But the problem is, I wouldn't know what an actor's duty is, right? And we talked about how I would need an expert to help me with all this stuff, but she is supposed to be that expert. And I get that she's 24 and I'm not trying to harp on her, but if you take a job like this, it's so serious and people's lives, as we have found out, are literally at stake. So these people have to be held. And frankly, if this is a precedent-setting case that you got to do your job as an armorer, I'm fine with that. I don't feel bad about that. I think that's exactly how it should be. We hold people to standards, and I think that that's perfectly reasonable. She confirms she never had live rounds on set before. They always, shook or had a hole, which we also know is not true based on ammo they found on set. She later confirms no one else ever brought ammo on set besides her, either personally or from a company that gave it to her. She has a vague memory of some of the safety bulletins or safety meetings, COVID protocol, things like that. It was unfair how she was told to train the actors. Basically, she had to train 9 people in one day. She wanted to take a lot more time. They didn't let her. Again, some of this is absolutely the fault of production, of her bosses, of trying to save money, things like that. Absolutely their fault, and there's nothing she could have done about it. But not the live rounds on set, and not this particular firearm in this situation, and not her bringing hodgepodges of ammo on set. So that's how the state has to separate this. Sorry, I just hit my mic. The state has to separate this. They've got to put, yeah, she's young. Yeah, maybe they didn't pay her enough. Yeah, maybe she had too much to do. But she was right there that day. She knew what she was supposed to do. She said she did what she was supposed to do, which shows she has the knowledge of it, and she just didn't do it. And she created the hazard by bringing the live ammo on set. And nobody thinks she did it on purpose. But even accidentally, you can't do that. So day 5 started with, are you a certified firearms instructor? And her answer, I don't know. How do you not know if you're a certified firearms instructor? I think obviously the answer is no to that. They follow up with, have you ever taken classes? She said, no, just training with my dad. And a lot of people are asking this type of question. Was she a Nepo hire because of her dad? She basically says you can't get a job in Hollywood without knowing somebody. So I don't think it's unusual that she would get hired because of that, but I mean, you would still want somebody that knows what they're doing. Bodie said, was Hannah required to do that interview? No. And other people have asked, why would her lawyer let her do that interview? I think they thought they were going to get them to make the charges go away. Jeep, how do we know the gun wasn't tampered with after she handed it off? This was on Lucifer before the real life event happened. Sus. She was set up, in my opinion. If she was set up, they did a pretty good job of nobody seeing anybody else touch the gun. And if it had been tampered with during lunch, in this interview I'm about to play, okay? And this may answer your question, maybe it won't. Jeep, let me know in the comments section as we work through the second half of her interview. She says she was supposed to be the one to check it before she handed it off to the actor, and she didn't. So if it was tampered with, they have a measure in place to prevent that tampered gun from getting to the actor. And that is the armorer, who's not just supposed to check it once a day, but she's supposed to check it and confirm cold before handing it to either the assistant director, producer, or whatever, or the actor. And the assistant producer is supposed to check it before giving it to the actor, and the actor is supposed to check it. So there are all sorts of things in place that should stop a tampered with gun. G. Mathan, will you follow the Willis trial and how it was handled in court? If you're talking about the Trump prosecutor, that is wild. I haven't watched all of it, but I watched some of it, and it's a really wild thing. I don't know if we can do it without people getting politicized about it. So I usually try to avoid that stuff. Dana, Peter, I love your recaps. Don't have the patience or time to watch the whole trial. Hit the like button and subscribe, y'all. Yes, please do, everybody. Tom, Peter, thank you for covering. I wasn't too interested at first, but it keeps getting more and more interesting and excellent. Precursor primer to the Baldwin case. Chat, is awesome. Thank you so much, Tom. And yeah, this is a definitely a primer for the Baldwin case. All right. She talks somewhat about the accidental discharges. We don't need to get into a ton of it. You don't need me to regurgitate all 9 hours of this. But she does talk about it. She confirms you have to pull the trigger on these weapons. Here's another interesting part. She was livid and got serious after the second accidental discharge. She was being heckled by the stuntman. So basically, she had a heightened awareness about the safety and the problems that could happen on set. So she's even raising her knowledge and foreseeability of a problem that could happen if she doesn't do her job. But then she also says she can't be responsible for every dickhead stuntman messing around with the guns. Well, you kind of are. If you and Sarah are in charge of all the guns and they're locked away if they're not in your possession or eyesight, you exactly are responsible for every person that touches a gun. Because she even confirms they were always locked. And she says that she told Dave to check it, which again, she knows Dave Halls is the assistant director, and he was supposed to testify today, but with these weird breaks, I don't really know what's going on, and the court's still on break. I thought it was just technical difficulties with the videos and stuff, but I don't know what it is right now. Thank you, Azam. But let's listen to another part here where she talks about what her responsibility is. Is this where it was? I think this is it.
Yeah. And I think it's because it was clean. So would you say it's your responsibility to check
Responsibility to check.
guns after they come back out? They come back out? Like when they brought back out from lunch? Yeah, they come back out.
Is it your responsibility? And Jeep, this is kind of, if I was the prosecutor, and I appreciate your question, because if you have it and you're wondering it, my guess is there's at least one person on the jury wondering the same thing. So if they're wondering, what about sabotage? And that's kind of what the defense is trying to do, is plant all this stuff. Seth Kenney maybe brought it on set. Maybe Sarah Zachary did something wrong. Maybe Alec Baldwin should have checked it. Dave Hall should have checked it. She was overworked. It's the producer's fault. Maybe there was sabotage. Maybe the crew came on because they were disgruntled and did this. They're just sprinkling all these things to try to poke holes. But Hannah Gutierrez Reed fills so many of those holes, including this one. Because if that gun was sabotage, the officer here says, isn't it your responsibility to check it after everybody comes back from lunch? She answers it in the affirmative.
They come back out? Like when they brought back out from lunch? Yeah, it's my responsibility to check them into the actor as they go out to the actor. So not to check their own.
Her responsibility to check it into the actor. So if it was sabotaged before she hands it to the actor to use it, it's her responsibility to check it. Her duty confirmed. It's tough. It's really tough. Vicki said, I have a feeling that her expert dad would have a totally different view on this if she were not his daughter. Yeah, I think that is probably correct. Rebecca, the only way to make sure there were no live rounds is to have no live rounds on set. What is the excuse there? Well, that's the point the state's trying to prove, is there were no live rounds. Except for, it's confirmed no live rounds for the companies that sent ammunition on set. But guess what? When you have a rogue armorer grabbing loose ammo from her car, filling boxes with mismatched ammo and bringing it on set, now it doesn't look weird to her, because if they open up a brand new box from PDQ and everything's different, it's like, this is weird, different shapes, sizes, colors, that would, sound off alarm bells. But when you fill a box with mismatched ammo, you're going to think, yeah, that's normal. That's how it should look because I filled the box with this mismatched ammo. Rebel Duck, seems like there was zero chain of custody procedures on this set. Hi, Peter. Visiting sunny Orlando this weekend. Well, enjoy the warm weather. Yeah. zero chain of custody, but also she is supposed to have so much oversight. She is supposed to control and train this process. And if she didn't feel like she could, because she was only 24 and not experienced enough, she shouldn't have taken the job. When you take the job and you take the money, you take the responsibility, you take the problems when it goes wrong. We all know that. Let's listen to her talk a little bit more about, how the live round got into the box, the question on everybody's mind, and what is her answer? Because she's obviously not going to say it's from my box that I filled, but what does she say? Does she have any plausible explanation at all?
I wouldn't really check it unless it was going to set.
But it did go to set.
Yeah, it went to set and I checked it with Dave.
Okay. Did you do any other?
And she still
You know,
says,
I
by
know
the
that
way,
you
that
have-
she did check it. She shook them all. They all shook, even though we know that's not true because there were live rounds in there. There was rounds with holes, and some of them would have shaken. So even the way she says she did check these 6 rounds is not true.
Different processes for checking these guns. Did you do any other check on that gun?
I did some barrel obstruction check too, also because while that round was in there, you're able to pull the hammer back slightly, look down the barrel, and see if there's anything in the barrel for that. So I did a barrel check on that gun.
And did you see anything at that point?
No.
Okay. That round that you pulled out of the box.
Corporal
I'm
indicate.
going to skip her kind of repeating the testimony.
Yes. Okay. And then the two didn't.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you think someone would potentially put live ammo on?
Corporal, what's your understanding of, after the incident, where the gun was unloaded?
So in Hannah's interview, she said that Dave Halls had brought that revolver over to her, and she had checked and unloaded that weapon over the prop cart.
And have you seen photos of those rounds that were taken from the prop cart?
Yes,
Do you know, are there 4 dummy rounds with depressed primers?
I believe there was.
Thanks.
And you're talking about dummy boxes?
What? Yeah.
The box from that one.
What do you? So I'm saying like you would, if you wanted to load this with a live, potentially you would just pull it back half cock and put it in there.
I don't know if you understood the question.
I don't think I am.
The lawyer's like, I don't think you understand the question. And then he kind of makes it even worse. Thank you, Francis. He's like, how did live ammo get into the box? And he like clarifies, can you tell us?
Yeah, so, but you said that you loaded each and every one of those rounds.
Yeah.
How would you say that a live round got in this box that you pulled from?
You loaded every round. How is this possible?
I'm not entirely sure if someone put a live round into that box or not. I checked those to the best of my abilities. I was walking in.
I check those to the best of my abilities. I never like a qualification like that when she's like, I don't really know. I am not sure how this happened, but I know I checked them to the best of my abilities, and we're about to hear what the best of her abilities are. Thank you, Rebecca, as well. Tons of gifted memberships today.
And shaking it in my ear, and I thought I heard it shake for sure. Walking in, shaking it in my ear, and I thought I heard it shake for sure.
When do you think somebody would have had the opportunity to put a live round?
She's like, oh, I just shook it and I thought I heard it shake, even though, again, we know that's impossible for half the rounds that were in that gun that she said she loaded. And then the officer says, when would somebody have had the opportunity to slip live ammo in? When would this sabotage have happened if it did?
It's hard to speculate on that exactly, but, that gun, it was on Alex most of the day, and then also it was on top of our cart sometimes too, and there were times when I was gone to the bathroom, and like I said, I got a key, and I tell the girls to watch the cart and everything, but sometimes the girls get distracted by the actors.
So she knows there's holes in her plan. She's like, I have to go to the bathroom. I tell the girls to watch it, even though I know they get distracted by the actors. It's like, then you need to pick a different plan. Could you imagine that if I was like, yeah, I know that spikes come up out of the floor and stab people while they're walking around my office sometimes, but I can't always be there to check because I have to go to the bathroom once in a while. So if somebody gets stabbed, somebody gets stabbed. It's like, no, come up with a different plan. Close that room. Get rid of the spikes. Put more people on duty watching. Like, you can't just go with a plan fails sometimes. Jeff said, if she's so incompetent, shouldn't that be the fault of the production for not getting rid of her? So civilly speaking, there's something called vicarious liability, where yes, the employer is at fault for the employee's actions. And that is something that could come into play here. But criminally speaking, and by the way, she would also be responsible civilly. So you're responsible for your own actions, even though sometimes civilly there is vicarious liability. Rebecca said, this is exactly why I will not give a medication in a syringe that somebody else drew up. Some differences. Yeah, I don't know. Again, I would have to get experts to explain exactly how this is done. But if you just go rogue or you're just picking stuff up off any table or bringing it from one room to the next, putting it in somebody, it's like, yeah, that's clearly negligent. If you're just bringing something from your car you had at home and you're like, yeah, I think this could be helpful. And it's like, oh, shoot, that's the wrong medicine. That's on you. I think you'd admit that. And I know you'd never do that, but I'm just saying it's kind of what happened here.
We need to elaborate on the box, because you're missing that part of the question.
Okay.
How that could have gotten in that box.
You're missing this part of the question. How could that have gotten into the box? I don't know if her lawyer thought she was going to say, you know, the disgruntled crew must have done it. This person didn't like Helena Hutchins or whatever. Maybe he thought she had a better answer, but she really doesn't have a better answer.
Oh, I mean, honestly, that box was sitting out all day. And when I picked up that box, I heard it jingle, like the whole box jingle. So that, to me,
Honestly, the box is sitting out all day, not helping her cause. That's not a good question. It's like a car accident, okay? And it's like, oh, well, how could you have possibly been speeding? It's like, honestly, I don't remember. I was so tired, I was falling asleep at the wheel. So there's no reason I was speeding on purpose. It's like, yeah, but you were still negligent because you were falling asleep at the wheel. It's like admitting some other negligence does not absolve you of the negligence we're trying to prove because it's all negligent.
me was saying, like, you know, this is a box of dummies, you know, still check everyone for the jingle. But so definitely some of those were 100% dummies, you know, and I don't know, someone probably.
Definitely some of those were 100% dummies because when I shook the box, I heard a jingle. I would think, as jingles do, if one round jingled when you shook the box, it would jingle. The whole box would jingle, right? That's clearly not enough. And she has even said in her own words, and again, if you wanted to parse it together, I bet the state could put together a 10-minute snippet of this interview where she explains her duty, then she explains what she did, which was not how she explained what her duty was. And then how she admits that she didn't do what was her responsibility, what she should have done, and that she effed up. They could probably put that together just by cutting this interview apart. Lesle says she should be held liable for conscious disregard of a known risk. It's a shame a 24-year-old with less than 1 year of training was hired. Yeah, and let's remember, I don't want to harp on her too much. She's not going to prison for the rest of her life. She may not go to jail at all. This carries with it, I think, 18 months. She may just get probation. But I do think that this is, even by her own admissions, rising to horrible, horrible negligence. And somebody's life was taken. G. Mathen, maybe not on views politically, but how, okay, back to Willis, but how it was handled specifically court-wise and fairness on the judge's hand. Either way, I totally understand. Thank you. I'll think about it. I will think about it. Victor, how will the fact that Baldwin has paid out in the case civilly affect the trials now? It will not come into it. You can't use civil payment as an admission of guilt, especially when there's confidential agreement and he didn't admit any wrongdoing or anything like that. So that's not going to come in his criminal case. At least I don't think it will.
Possibly could have done something at lunch. The box could have already had some live one in it in the morning, and we probably wouldn't have noticed unless you picked it up.
The box could have had live ammo in it, and you wouldn't have noticed. It's like, what? It's literally what you're paid to do is notice. Like, that's crazy to me that's what she's like. Yeah, I mean, I guess we went to lunch. It could have been put in at lunch. I mean, nobody would have noticed if live ammo was put in there. It's like you just said it's your responsibility to check it before it goes to the actor. Not check it before lunch, before the scene that it goes to the actor on.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure when that could have got in there, and honestly, it could have been in there from the beginning of it.
Okay. Where was the prop cart?
The prop cart, so that's another thing. The prop cart, like, moved significantly after the incident.
What, I mean, I'm not, everything.
Well, the statement that Ms. Gutierrez just made, that the prop cart had moved significantly after the incident, is that consistent with what she told you on October 21st?
No.
I moved after the incident.
So she's
Okay.
changed her story. And again, that happened a couple times where she changed her story a little bit. with the prop cart moving and some other things from the 21st to a couple weeks later. No surprise there. She's trying to make it sound better this time around.
All right, cool.
You know, I'm concerned, but during lunch.
So during lunch, it was still in the same spot where I told you guys, front of the church, the doorway here, your guys' squad car over here that I was sitting in, my little cart over here next to a black tent.
Make this easier for you.
Well, that was actually the last thing you said. Yeah.
Again, the giggling and stuff that happened during this interview, I can understand why people were a little appalled by some of the interaction here. Chris said, Peter, should you really have spikes popping out of the floor of your office? I can't give you legal advice, but you should change that. I'll think about it, Chris. I'll think about it. Francis said, no politics, Peter, please. You know, I don't do politics. I don't do politics. Rebecca said, I got recognized in my lawyer, pullover sweatshirt in North Dakota. I don't know if I believe you, Rebecca. You're telling me there's more than just you that watch in North Dakota? I don't know if I believe that. Did you buy him the sweatshirt? You probably bought him the sweatshirt. Oh, you're saying they recognize you in the sweatshirt. Okay. I still would be surprised if this actually happened. That's crazy.
Sitting there with a gun ready. And then also Dave was just sitting in with it. And then I was going to come back in whenever Alec got there. But Alec got there and no.
Sorry, I'm going to back it up a little bit. She's like, I was going to come back in. This is basically why she didn't do what she was supposed to do and check the gun before it got to Alec. Again, blaming Dave, blaming whoever, but in reality, she could have, and she didn't. That's the point. It wasn't intentional, but it was negligent. She dropped the ball.
And in there like that quickly after lunch. Usually things take a little while for camera to get set up and everything,
Okay. You cleaned the gun, put that last round in it, and then how long would you say that took?
I think 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where does the gun go after that?
Excuse me. So the gun after that walks in with me and goes to Dave. Try to show it to Dave. Dave's getting talked at.
Inside or outside of the church?
I try to show it to Dave. Dave's getting talked at. It's like trying to show it to Dave is one thing, but did you not check every individual bullet like you were supposed to? You said you dummied the gum. You dummied the gun up. Did you or did you not?
Inside. He's sitting in the pew, and I think he's supposed to be arrested for someone. And from what I understood, it was just supposed to be a shot where, like, he's sitting there with the gun ready. And then also Dave was just sitting in with it, and then I was going to come back in whenever Alec got there. But Alec got there, and no one called me in.
Okay.
So I wasn't able to do that last check before Alec got it because I had no idea that the gun had been handed off. And also,
So she wasn't able to do the last check. And again, this argument may seem like a good argument, may seem like it absolves her from culpability, that she didn't get to do the last check that she was supposed to do before it got handed to Alec. Now, she didn't say this in her first interview, number one. Number two, if she is supposed to be the one handing it off and she's supposed to be on set every time a firearm is being used, she needs to make sure she's doing her job, not waiting for somebody else to tell her to do her job. She even said, I thought it was going to take a little bit more time to set up the cameras. Well, you thought wrong. And does that just mean you don't have to do your job then? It's like a security guard being like, oh, I didn't think anybody showed up yet. So when somebody broke in, it's like, yeah, you failed, dude. You failed. You were supposed to be there. You're the last line of defense. She is supposed to be the last line of safety check. Now, you can argue Alec Baldwin, the actor, before you hold the gun, point it, check it, know it. I get it, 100%. I get it, and we're going to talk about that with Alec Baldwin's trial. But as far as she's concerned, sabotage, people messing with the gun, live ammunition being on set and ending up in that firearm, she is supposed to be the last line of defense for that and to make sure that does not happen. Frankly, the first line of defense too.
so the video village, due to the camera crew quitting that day, wasn't working. So I had no way to see in there.
So you,
And the crew not working, again, pointing the finger at somebody else, so she had no way to see in there. So if you can't see inside there and know when to go in, what do you think you should do, chat? If it's your job to be somewhere and you think it's going to take 5 minutes longer so you can't see on the security footage, well, why don't you just go in there and watch and wait? That's probably what you should do. Vicki said, I don't care what was in the box. The significance is the bullets in the gun that she clearly didn't check. Yeah, and I think that's fair. And I think the state could win by just proving she put a live round in the gun. But also, a lot of people have the question as to how did the live ammo get on set? So it doesn't hurt if you can answer that too as the state. Rebecca said, I would always admit my failures. I think that's the best thing. If you screw up, you admit you screw up. I think they would have given her probation and whatever, and potentially a slap on the wrist, maybe even a misdemeanor if she would have worked something out. I don't know. I shouldn't say that because maybe they did try to work something lesser out and they wanted to make an example of her. I don't know. Susan, thank you for gifting 5 memberships.
Opened the gun for Dave
Mhm.
to do the check,
Mhm.
inside or outside of the church.
Inside.
Okay.
It was open already because, I put it in there and I walked in putting it in and I just left it open. rather than
And what
closing
did
it.
that check consist of?
The check consists of me spinning the cylinder for Dave and telling him that it was gummied up.
So again, how is this Dave Halls' fault? I mean, it is because he should have checked it himself, but it's not Dave Halls' fault that she's not negligent because she showed it to him, spun the cylinder, said it's dummied up. So he does not absolve her from her negligence.
Did that gun go to anyone else? Did it go, because obviously it was in the sock. Did anybody else have a handle on that gun?
After lunch? Yeah. Not that I could tell. Yeah.
So there goes that defense, right? I'll play it again.
It was in the sock. That gun go to anyone else? Did it go, because obviously it was in the sock. Did anybody else have a handle on that gun?
After lunch? Yeah. Not that I could tell.
Did anyone else have a handle on that gun after lunch? Not that I could tell. Well, you're the expert. You saw it. You handed it to Dave Halls. So to say now that it was sabotage or somebody else got to it, how is there any evidence of that at all?
Yeah.
Did Nicole ever handle the gun? Russ's gun?
She only handled it the day before, just like brought it down to me from the cart.
Okay,
Yeah.
not the day of the incident.
No.
All right. So you give it to Dave, and then where do you go at that point?
I give it to Dave and I step outside because we're about to start shooting and I was getting like all my stuff ready. And also he was
What do you mean by getting your stuff ready?
getting my,
He steps outside to get all her stuff ready. It sounds good. Why didn't you have your stuff ready before? Why wouldn't you have your stuff ready before so you could be on set when the weapon's being used, which is your job that you're supposed to do? Stephanie said she's so nonchalant and seems to feel like she's a misunderstood baddie. She takes no responsibility. Makes me glad that this is a criminal charge. I mean, I definitely think that this is negligence to a level with a known dangerous activity that we have got to deter people from doing in the future. Rebecca said, Peter, I would never lie to you. I'm honest to a fault. I didn't mean that you were lying, Rebecca. I'm just saying it's so shocking to me that that could actually happen in North Dakota. But I know you represent for the channel hard, so I appreciate it.
fanny pack filled up and, getting my pockets like lined with different types of blanks and everything because I have a pocket system where all the halves go on one side, all the quarters go over here. This is my dummy pocket. And yeah, these are my empty pockets. And sometimes I use my butt pockets if I need to. So like, Sarah, usually I would just set my fanny pack up for her, even though I like to have both on me because Sarah doesn't understand the importance of pockets. But so I would set that up for her and I would start getting my pockets and everything ready.
So it's pretty common for you to put stuff in like your pants pocket, right? That's what you're talking about?
Yeah.
Okay.
Common to put mostly blanks in there, yeah. And then also some trash, like you can't exactly just throw trash around and you eat stuff. So just a lot of pockets. That's why I like those pants.
So you have
A lot of pockets, really important part of the job. Mercy Cat said, I've only played a lawyer on TV, but even I know to shut this interview down. Yeah, at this point, you got to realize that even her explanations are negligent. So if that's what you're dealing with, I mean, I probably believe he thought she was going to get out of this somehow, but it's not going well for her. Rexy said, why didn't she request a lawyer being present? Well, the guy to her left with the bald head, who's also in court representing her, is in fact her lawyer. I know it might be hard to believe that he's there during this, but he is. Jeep. Hannah Gutierrez giving the gun to DH without witnessing its final destination raises suspicion of DH tampering. His quick guilty plea could be strategic deflection. There's another good thing the defense could try to argue is that he sabotaged this whole situation just to get Hannah Gutierrez Reed or Alec Baldwin, or because he didn't like Elena Hutchins, or that's something you could try to sell to the jury. I think it's possible, but I don't think it's plausible based on the evidence in the case. Britt said, isn't she supposed to be wherever the guns are? Why is she just handing it off and leaving? Not just that, but she's like, I had this person go get it for me off the cart and bring it to me. Yeah, it's possible somebody could have messed with it at lunch. It's like, why wouldn't you check it if you thought it was possible somebody could mess with it while you guys are at lunch? I don't understand the thought process.
Hand the gun to Dave, and then did you see what he did with it at that point?
At that point, he was just sitting in with it and not moving it at all. Just holding it.
Okay.
And his finger wasn't in the trigger guard or anything.
Obviously this gun goes in Alex bandolier, does cross draw with it.
Yeah. Which I was already worried about that because he hadn't really trained with that much.
Okay.
Yeah. I texted his assistant the night before.
So she was already worried. People weren't training enough, but she didn't step in and make sure it didn't happen. And those are the problems that are kind of consistent throughout her interview. There was one other part I want to play, but I can just kind of tell you. She also kept saying, like, Dave was in my ear. I had all this stuff going on. These people were telling me to do all this stuff. Like, she was distracted and couldn't do her job. Which, again, that's admitting you didn't do your job well and blaming the negligence on other things. But does that make it not negligent? That's the tough part. And basically confirms that spinning the cylinder would not show Halls if they're all dummies, because it doesn't shake them all. The ones that have a hole in it wouldn't shake if you spun it. Some of them look exactly the same from the backside as live ammunition. The point is, she definitely did not know live ammunition was on set, which it got there somehow, whether it was her negligently bringing it on set or some other way. It got there. She didn't think it was there, and she was not hypersensitive or hyper safe enough, as an armorer should be, to make sure none of it made its way into the firearm. Samantha asked, is she currently in custody? No, which is not abnormal. It's, a lower level felony, only carrying it with it 18 months. It would be very unusual for somebody to sit in jail waiting, for months and months and months on a case where you'd only get a couple months in jail at worst. So no, she's not in custody. I have questions. Jeepiness, do you know how long he got or what his sentence is? Yeah. So David Halls got, I think 6 or 18 months of unsupervised probation. Basically nothing, but he is a convicted felon. Everything she says is admitting negligence. I agree. And I think that's kind of the overarching theme that, I want to know from you guys is, I think they've done a good job as the state proving that there was negligence here, but is it such a level of negligence that you think carries with a criminal culpability, reckless disregard for other people's safety, foreseeable that someone's life would end or somebody would be seriously injured because of her negligence? How do you feel about that based on the evidence and the testimony that you have heard? Because from my perspective, there is a line, right? An involuntary manslaughter in New Mexico is the unintentional killing of a person while committing a misdemeanor criminal offense. Involuntary manslaughter can also occur if a person is engaging in a lawful act but unintentionally kills someone by being negligent or not exercising due care. Involuntary manslaughter is classified as a 4th-degree felony with sentencing up to 18 months in prison and probation. So do you think it rises to that level? That's the question. I'm starting to get there. Thank you, Carter, for gifting 5 memberships. Azam said, Peter, is that blue pouch on your desk for John? Yes, it is. I texted him the birthday gift you sent him. I just have to get it to him. He'll be back in town soon. Unsupervised probation seems utterly useless. I mean, it's basically for cooperating. Hey, that's what I'm saying. They're not trying to end these people's lives or put them in prison for the rest of their lives. They're trying to get felony convictions. They charge things they think they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt based on the evidence they have. And that's how they're going forward. And that's kind of been the way that the prosecutors have handled this case. They're not shooting for the moon and hoping to land on the stars. They're basically shooting at one specific star they think they can prove. 7, I feel like her age and experience and lack of training play a factor in her negligence. Seems like she got her job because of her dad. But does that absolve her from her liability? To me, it does not. Nina, Peter, OT, but can you, off topic, I think that means, but can you take a plea deal back as a defendant? If yes, when, or is it possible at all if it's signed, greetings from Switzerland? Yes, but only if there was fraud or coercion or some kind of illegal activity on the part of law enforcement or lawyers involved. They made you certain promises that didn't come true. There are all sorts of things you can, but it's very unlikely to win when you appeal something that you've already pled to. All right. We're about at that hour mark, and I think we've recapped the majority of stuff we needed to. Thank you guys for showing up, for hanging out, for hitting that like button. I appreciate it so much. And if you haven't already, hit that like button. It's always fun to be the lawyer you know, and I appreciate everybody coming here for all of these videos and hanging out with us and answering and asking questions and giving your comments and your input. It's great to know you guys. You know that? It is. It's really great to know you as a chat. And I hope you feel the same. So until next time, I'm out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast with new seasons dropping every quarter. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.